Hey everyone, welcome to tonight's journey. We're stepping into a world that's raw, unfiltered, and absolutely unforgiving, ancient Rome. But here's the twist, you're not living in luxury and you're not a legend. Forget marble baths and golden crowns. Tonight, you're just you, dropped unprepared into a world full of grime, danger, and everyday struggle. You won't find yourself in the Senate, and the only thing you're fighting for is survival. In this moment, you are part of something eternal, something unbroken. As the dawn breaks, you join a timeless journey, a journey through a city that never truly sleeps, where the past and present coexist. But before we dive deeper, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Let me know your city, your country, and what time it is in your corner of the world. It's amazing to see the diversity of where we're all tuning in from. And if you're vibing with the story so far, hit that like button and subscribe. Now, let's set the scene. You open your eyes, not just to the day, but to a city of legends. The Romans once ruled the world, but their spirit still lingers here. Every step you take brings you closer to the heartbeat of the city. The whispers of the past are always with you, carried on the wind. Congratulations! You've woken up in ancient Rome, not in a palace of marble, not in a villa surrounded by gardens and fountains. No, you've opened your eyes in something far less glorious, an insula. The word means island, but this is no paradise. An insula is a crowded apartment block, tall, swaying, built quickly and cheaply. An island of wood and brick, rising up above the city streets. It creaks, it groans, it leans just slightly in the wind. And you live here. Your room is small. A single space that is your bedroom, your kitchen, your everything. The air is heavy and close. You slept on a straw mattress laid over wood, but the straw is old, brittle, and alive with tiny creatures that crawl and bite. If you move too quickly, you feel the straw shift and hear the faint scattering of bedbugs darting for safety. The blanket on top of you is rough, scratchy wool. Heavy enough to keep you warm, but itchy enough that your skin remembers it long after you rise. Beside you, a clay lamp sputters, the last of its oil burning into thick, choking smoke. It paints the ceiling black with soot. And the ceiling itself? It sags dangerously, cracked and stained, as though it could collapse at any moment. And maybe it could, because insulae collapse often. The walls are thin, the beams are cheap. Rome builds up, not out, and these towers crumble under their own weight. Sometimes they don't even need a fire or an earthquake. Sometimes they just fall, and everyone inside goes down with them. So when you wake in Rome, there's always that first thought. Did I survive the night? And this morning, you did. But the city never lets you rest for long. You hear it before you even open the shutters. The sound of life. A baby crying in the apartment next to yours. A couple above you arguing about bread prices. Someone downstairs clattering with pots and pans. And outside, the real noise begins. Donkeys braying, carts rattling over stone, the bark of dogs fighting for scraps, the voices of vendors already calling to anyone who will listen. Rome wakes early, Rome never sleeps, and then the smell reaches you. It seeps in through cracks in the shutters, through gaps in the wall. Not the smell of baking bread, not yet, not sweet fruit or herbs. No, the smell of waste. The stink of trash thrown into the alley below. Rotting food, fish guts, yesterday's wine spilled into the dirt. Human waste too, because chamber pots are emptied out the window, no matter who is walking below. You breathe it in before you even realize, because in Rome, the smell of the streets comes to you whether you want it or not. You sit up slowly. The floor under your feet is cold, gritty with dust. A rat darts back into the shadows. You rub your eyes, feeling the heaviness of smoke still clinging to the air. And you listen to the wood creak, the whole building shifting around you as dozens of neighbors stir awake. Fires. That's the other thought that comes with morning. Will the building burn today? Rome is no stranger to flames. Oil lamps tip over. Cooking fires spark. And when one insula burns, the fire leaps across narrow alleys to the next and the next. Whole districts have been swallowed that way. So even as you sit on your straw bed, stretching your aching back, the day could end in smoke. Juvenal, a Roman poet, once said it plainly, "You're safer sleeping in a hut on a farm than in an apartment in the city. At least the hut won't crush you or roast you alive while you dream. So you survived the night. You survived the first breath of morning, and now Rome is waiting for you. The eternal city, a million souls crowded together, some rich, most poor, all jostling in the same narrow streets. And today, you'll be one of them. Congratulations, woken up in Rome. But before you can take a single step into your day, before you can even think about food or work, there is one simple human problem to solve. You need a bathroom. And in ancient Rome, that is not going to be pleasant. So you've woken up, you've survived the night in your insula. You've stretched, rubbed the dust from your eyes, and listened to the noise of the city waking up around you. And now, nature calls. Where do you go? Because in Rome, the answer isn't private or clean or even safe. There are no neat bathrooms waiting for you. No wooden door to close, no candle to light. Instead, you make your way down the rickety stairs, across the courtyard, or maybe even down the street toward a communal latrine. The word itself is neat, tidy, latrine, but the reality is anything but. Imagine a long stone bench cool beneath you, a row of neat, round holes carved into its surface. And now imagine, dozen, 2 dozen, maybe 30 other people sitting shoulder to shoulder on the same bench, all doing exactly the same thing. There are no walls, no partitions, no privacy. You can't look away. You can't pretend you're alone. Your neighbors are here, your strangers are here, everyone is here. And you all sit together in silence, or in chatter, or in the awkward coughs of people trying to ignore what's happening. Beneath you, water trickles constantly. A shallow stream runs below the bench, carrying everything away into the sewers and eventually into the Tiber River. The smell, it is sharp, heavy. Vinegar, human waste, damp stone, and the faint metallic tang of iron. It clings to the walls, it clings to your skin, it clings to the very air you breathe. And then comes the part modern listeners dread. There is no toilet paper. There are no rags or cloths or tissues. Instead, there is the infamous tersorium, a sponge tied to the end of a stick, shared by everyone. After you're finished, you reach for it. You dip it into a shallow gutter of running water or a bucket filled with vinegar meant to cleanse it. Then you use it. And when you're done, you place it back. For the next person. Yes, the next person. It is hard to imagine now, but for Romans, this was ordinary. This was normal. And perhaps, over time, the strangeness dulled. But for you, freshly dropped into the eternal city, it is a shock you can't ignore. And as if that weren't enough, there are the dangers. Because the sewers themselves are alive. Alive with rats. Alive with insects. Alive with methane gas building beneath the surface. And sometimes, just sometimes, when a torch was brought too close, the gas ignited. There are whispered stories of latrines exploding, of walls cracking, of fires starting in the most undignified of ways. So you sit, you hurry, you try not to think about the sponge, and you rise as quickly as you can. You step back out into the sunlight, grateful for the air, even if it carries the scent of trash and sweat and horses. Congratulations. You have survived the Roman bathroom. But survival is only step one, because your stomach growls. The morning has only just begun, and now you face another Roman ritual. A ritual far less explosive, but almost just as disappointing. Breakfast. Your stomach growls. The insula has woken, the latrine has been survived, and now, before you can face the rest of Rome, you need to eat. But here's the thing. In ancient Rome, eating breakfast is not the ritual of joy that we know today. There is no coffee brewing, no steam rising from cups, no warm pastry waiting to be buttered. The Romans had a word for breakfast, intaculum. Elegant, lyrical. It sounds like something served on silver plates under marble arches. But the truth is, far plainer if you are poor, and most Romans are, your morning begins with bread. Bread that is dry, hard, and stale from the day before. You hold it in your hand. You feel the coarse crust, dusty and cracked, the way it scratches against your fingertips. You bite into it and your jaw aches as you chew. Crumbs scatter down your tunic. The taste is dull, empty, the kind of food that keeps you alive but never makes you happy. And so you soften it. You dip it into wine. Not rich, ruby wine from golden goblets, but cheap wine, watered down and sour. It burns faintly on your tongue, the tang of vinegar mixed with grapes that were crushed too quickly, fermented too fast. You drink it anyway. Everyone does. Because in Rome, wine is not a luxury, it is water. It is safer to drink than the water from fountains, which carries disease and dirt. So you chew your bread, you sip your wine. You force yourself to believe this is enough. And sometimes, if fortune smiles, there is more, an olive wrinkled and sharp with brine. You pick it carefully from the clay jar, dripping with salty liquid. You roll it on your tongue, savoring the bitterness, the burst of sharp flavor against the dryness of bread. For a moment, just a moment, your body feels nourished. Almost, or perhaps there is a date, sweet, sticky. A gift from merchants who carried it across deserts and seas. You chew slowly, letting the honeyed taste linger, pretending you are wealthier than you are. If you are lucky, truly lucky, you may have goat cheese. A small wedge, crumbly and pungent, wrapped in a fig leaf to keep it cool. Spread thinly on bread, it softens the bite, makes the stale crust bearable. But these are luxuries for the poor. Not every day, not every morning. Some mornings there is only bread. If you are a child in Rome, breakfast looks a little different. Sometimes bread is crumbled into milk, warm from a goat. Sometimes a handful of dried figs is pressed into your hand before you are sent running into the street. Sometimes, if you are very young, a spoon of honey is offered to quiet you. Simple things, small comforts. A sweetness at the edge of survival. Now imagine you are not poor. Imagine you wake in a villa with painted walls and mosaic floors. Your breakfast tray is carried to you by a servant. The bread is fresh, baked in your own kitchen. It is softer, lighter, almost golden. You drizzle honey across it, thick and golden, the kind that drips slowly and clings to your fingers. You take a bite and the sweetness fills your mouth. Beside it, a bowl of fruit, grapes, figs, pomegranates, dates. Some grown in Italy, others shipped from faraway lands. You choose carefully because each one reminds you that you are wealthy, that you can afford what others cannot. There may be cheese wrapped in herbs, nuts roasted and salted, perhaps even eggs boiled and sprinkled with garum, the famous Roman fish sauce. It is not a feast, no. Breakfast in Rome is never extravagant, but it is abundance compared to the poor man's crust. And yet, even the rich eat lightly, because the true Roman meal comes later. Lunch, and especially dinner, is where the empire shows its appetite. Breakfast is only a whisper. And always there is wine, for rich and poor alike. Romans drink it in the morning not to celebrate, not to indulge, but simply because it is safer than water. It is not strong wine. It is watered down, spiced with herbs, sometimes warmed. But it is still wine. So picture it, the sun just rising, the streets still cool, and already the taste of sour grapes lingering on your lips. A fog spreads slowly across your mind. Not drunkenness, no, but a softness, a heaviness. You step into the day not with a burst of caffeine, but with the quiet blur of wine. And here, perhaps, is the strangest thought. There is no coffee, no tea, no sugar, no jolt of energy to pull you awake, no sweet rush to start your day. Imagine a world without it. Imagine rising every morning knowing that the first thing you taste will be sour bread, or salty olives, or watered wine. And still, the Romans endured. They marched, they built, they conquered. On this breakfast, they ruled the world. So you finish your bread, you drain your cup, you wipe your lips with your sleeve because napkins are still centuries away. You adjust your tunic, still itchy, still smelling faintly of smoke. You sigh. You breathe, you prepare yourself for what comes next. Because in Rome, survival is not just about eating. It is about showing who you are. And the next test of the morning is not food. It is clothing, the fabric you drape over your shoulders. The folds you fight to arrange, the colors that declare your place in society. Congratulations, you have eaten your Roman breakfast. But now you must dress for the empire. You've eaten your bread, you've sipped your sour wine. And now you must face another Roman ordeal, getting dressed. If you are poor, and most Romans are, your wardrobe is simple. A single wool tunic. It hangs loose over your shoulders, belted clumsily at the waist. The wool is rough, uneven, and often unwashed. When you slip it on, it scratches your arms, your chest, the back of your neck. The itch is constant, like a whisper against your skin you can never quite ignore. And the smell? Rome does not have soap as we know it. Laundry is done in public philoniki. Laundries where tunics are washed not with soap, but with urine. Yes, collected in jars at street corners. The ammonia cleans the cloth, bleaches the stains, but it leaves its mark. A faint tang, sharp, acrid. When you walk into the sunlight, your tunic carries with it the ghost of the latrine. You cinch the rope at your waist. You smooth the creases with your palm. This is your clothing. Humble, scratchy, eternal. If you are rich, however, dressing is far from simple. Because wealth is not only seen in your villa or your meals, it is written on your very body. And nothing declares your status like the toga. The toga is Rome's most famous garment. A symbol, a statement, and also a curse. Imagine a sheet of wool not small, not modest, but massive. 12, 15, even 18 feet long. You cannot simply throw it over your shoulder. No, you must drape it, fold it, wrap it. Arrange it just so, with folds cascading down your arm, with pleats falling in careful lines. It is heavy, hot. The fabric gathers around your legs, tangling at your ankles. Without a servant to help you, you stumble. Without practice, you look foolish. And even with practice, the toga demands your patience. But when you finally manage it, when the wool lies correctly, when the folds sit in perfect order, you stand transformed. You are not just a man. You are a citizen. A plain toga, white, marks you as an ordinary Roman. A toga with a broad purple stripe declares you a senator. A toga with a narrow stripe marks you as an equestrian, part of Rome's wealthy class. The emperor alone may wear the toga entirely of purple, heavy with power, heavy with meaning. So yes, the toga is uncomfortable, but it is identity. And in Rome, identity matters more than comfort. For women, the ritual is no lighter. A Roman woman rises and steps into her stola, a long dress, often layered with a tunic beneath. The stola drapes to the floor, cinched with belts, heavy with folds. Over it, she may wrap a palla, a cloak drawn carefully around her shoulders, pulled over her head in public for modesty. It looks graceful in statues, elegant in marble carvings. But in life, it is heavy, restrictive. The wool clings in the heat, weighs in the rain, stiffens in the wind. And then the hair. Hairstyles in Rome could take an hour, even two. Simple braids for the poor. Elaborate curls, towers, and coils for the wealthy, pinned in place with ivory, bone, or even gold. Some women employed slaves trained only for hair, nimble fingers twisting, braiding, weaving, until the head became a living sculpture. Jewelry followed. Rings, brooches, necklaces. Each piece a signal of wealth, of family, of place in society. Dressing, for women, was not just necessity. It was performance. And what of children? The youngest wore simple tunics, like miniature versions of their parents. But Roman children of freeborn families also wore the toga praetexta, a toga with a purple border, marking innocence and protection. They would shed it when they came of age, stepping into the white toga of adulthood. Even childhood clothing carried meaning. Nothing in Rome was ever just fabric. Everything was symbol. That is the truth of Roman clothing. Every fold, every stripe, every color whispered who you were. The poor man's tunic said survival. The senator's toga said power. The woman's stola said modesty and station. The slave's garment said ownership. You could read a person before they spoke. You could know their place before they opened their mouth. Clothing was language, and every Roman spoke it. And so you stand dressed. If you are poor, you itch. If you are rich, you stumble beneath wool. If you are a woman, you balance the weight of stola, palla, and pins. You tug at your belt. You pull at your folds. You adjust your pins. And you prepare yourself to step outside into the press of Rome's streets, knowing that the city will judge you by every thread you wear. Congratulations, you are dressed, you are marked, you are Roman. But clothing alone will not carry you through the day. Rome is not gentle. Rome demands labor. And now, the city calls you to its grind. To the heat, the sweat, the endless work of survival, you are dressed. You are marked by your tunic, your toga, your stola. Rome has looked at you and decided who you are, and now the city demands its due. Now it is time to work. The sun has barely risen, but the streets are already alive. Wooden carts rattle over the stone roads, iron-rimmed wheels clanging against uneven slabs. Vendors shout prices, voices sharp as knives. Donkeys bray, straining against their harnesses. Dogs bark and snap at scraps. 100 languages rise in the air, Latin, Greek, Syriac, Gaulish, because Rome is the empire and the empire has gathered here. And you, like everyone else, are pulled into the stream, into the press of bodies, into the city's endless rhythm. If you are poor, your day is brutal. Perhaps you are a porter. Your shoulders strain beneath the weight of amphorae, giant clay jars filled with wine, oil, or grain. You bend your knees, you lift, you stagger down the street, the amphora digging into your back. Each step is pain, but you cannot stop, because if you stop, someone else takes the job. Perhaps you are a laborer at a building site. Rome is always building, always repairing, always stacking stone upon stone. You carry bricks up wooden scaffolds, the boards creaking beneath your feet. Dust clogs your throat, lime burns your hands, sweat blinds your eyes. A slip means a broken limb or worse. And there is no safety net, no payment if you fall, or perhaps you work on the docks of the Tiber. Ships arrive daily, heavy with cargo, grain from Egypt, marble from Greece, spices. From Arabia, glass from Syria. You haul sacks of wheat, crates of pottery, bundles of timber. The river stinks, thick with sewage, and yet it is lifeline and death alike. If you stumble, if you fall in, the current carries you away. Your body is your wage, and Rome uses it until it breaks. If you are a craftsman, your work is no lighter, only different. The blacksmith stands at the forge, hammering iron until sparks bite his arms. His hands are blistered, his lungs filled with smoke. The potter turns his wheel, shaping clay into bowls, lamps, amphorae. His fingers are cracked, his back bent. The kiln roars, the air suffocates. The shoemaker bends over leather, trimming, cutting, stitching by lamplight. The awl slips, piercing skin. Blood stains the hide. He wipes it away, keeps working. There is pride in craft, yes. But pride does not soothe the ache in the body. And if you are enslaved, hundreds of thousands in Rome are, your day is not even yours. You wake when ordered. You work where commanded. You may be scrubbing floors in a wealthy household, carrying water from fountains, tending fires, preparing meals. You may be tutoring a rich man's child, your knowledge of Greek or Latin put to use for someone else's gain. You may be in the fields outside the city, bent double beneath the sun, harvesting grain. You will never taste, some are beaten, some are chained, some rarely are treated kindly, but none are free. Your body, your time, your life belong to someone else. Even children do not escape, some are lucky. They rise with wax tablets in their hands, walking to school to learn their letters. They sit cross-legged, scratching lines into wax with a stylus, reciting Latin and Greek until their voices crack. Others are not so lucky. They apprentice in trades, working beside fathers or uncles, learning the hard way with no kindness spared. And many, of course, simply labor, carrying water, sweeping streets, selling nuts or fruit from a tray. Childhood is short in Rome. Work begins early, and always, always there is pain. Backs bent, shoulders raw, fingers split, feet blistered. Rome runs on human labor, and human bodies pay the price. There are no painkillers, no antibiotics, no hospitals. A pulled muscle may linger for weeks. A broken bone may heal crooked, a cut may fester into infection. And when your body fails, Rome does not stop for you. You are simply left behind. Still, the city thrums, hammer against anvil, voices in the forum, wheels rattling over stone. Everywhere you look, men and women bent to their tasks. Some with pride, some with despair, all with necessity. Because Rome is vast, and to survive it, you must serve it. By midday, your tunic clings to your body with sweat. Dust coats your skin, turns your hair gray. Your throat burns with thirst, your stomach growls for more than bread. But there is no stopping yet. Rome is not gentle. Rome demands. And if work is pain, then what happens when you fall ill? Because in this city, the cure may be stranger, perhaps even more dangerous than the sickness itself. You've worked, you've labored, your body aches with the weight of Rome's demands. You've survived the streets, the sweat, and the dust. But now you face the true test. What happens when your body breaks? In Rome, illness is seen not as a result of germs or viruses, but as an imbalance inside the body. Ancient Roman doctors follow the teachings of Hippocrates, and they believe in the theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile. Black bile, these four fluids are believed to control everything about your body: your health, your mood, your behavior. If you feel sick, it's because one of these humors is out of balance. Too much blood, you're feverish, hot-headed, perhaps even a little too jolly. Too much black bile, you're depressed, sluggish, perhaps even a bit melancholic. Too much yellow bile, you're angry, restless, irritable. And too much phlegm, you're lethargic, sluggish, perhaps even congested. The cure, adjusting these humors, bring them into balance. But how do you do that in ancient Rome? Roman medicine may sound rudimentary by modern standards, but it was all they had. And in Rome, where every breath feels like a fight for survival, people will do almost anything for a cure. Bloodletting was a common treatment. To balance the humors, a doctor would use leeches or cut open veins. This was meant to rid the body of excess blood, to restore the balance of the four humors. You might feel a little dizzy afterward, perhaps even faint. But the idea was that less blood meant less heat, less fever. Purge and vomit. If bloodletting didn't work, the doctor might turn to other measures. Purgatives, harsh substances that made you vomit or have diarrhea, were popular. The goal was to expel the bad humors from the body, to cleanse the system of whatever was making you sick. You might drink foul potions made from the juice of bitter herbs or the bile of certain animals. If you survived the treatment, you'd feel better, or at least you'd feel lighter. Hot baths and cold compresses. On a simpler note, baths were an important part of Roman medicine. They weren't just for cleanliness, they were for healing. The Romans believed that soaking in hot water would open your pores and allow your humors to flow freely. Some bathhouses had pools filled with medicinal herbs, like rosemary or lavender. Others used cold water to shock the system, which was supposed to restore balance. But what if you couldn't afford a bath? Or what if you had an injury and you couldn't submerge yourself in water? Well, then you might use cold compresses soaked in wine or vinegar to help cool inflammation. In many cases, this was a more affordable remedy, but it wasn't exactly soothing. But perhaps the most strange cures were the ones that combined herbs, magic, and superstition. Because in Rome, medicine was not just science, it was also mysticism. Fumigation was a common remedy. To clear your sinuses, cure headaches, or ease your breathing, Romans would burn incense or herbs in small, handheld burners or in large altars at temples. They believed that the smoke could draw out illness from these to scrape the sickness out of your body, hoping that the rough materials would help clear out the bad humors. For wounds, the Romans had their own versions of salves and ointments. Goat's milk mixed with ground herbs would be applied to cuts and bruises. But in the case of severe injuries, like broken bones, the Romans would use plaster. Not the kind we know today, but a primitive form made from lime, egg whites, and animal fat. They would slather it on broken limbs and then wrap it in cloth, hoping to set the bone as it dried. But if you had a complicated fracture, or if the treatment was done poorly, you could very well end up with your bone healing at an awkward angle, or worse, becoming infected. And then there were the gods. Romans didn't just rely on science, they also relied on prayers and superstition. After all, disease could be caused by angry gods or vengeful spirits. If you were sick, maybe you'd made a mistake in your sacrifice, or perhaps you had neglected your gods in favor of more mundane matters. To ward off disease, Romans would often turn to prayers for healing. Many households had a small shrine dedicated to the gods of health. One of the most popular gods for healing was Aesculapius, the god of medicine. His temples were scattered across Rome, and they became centers for spiritual healing. People would sleep in the temple, hoping for a divine vision or dream to show them the cure for their ailments. Others turned to amulets. You'd find these worn by men, women, and children alike. Amulets made from bone, wood, or iron, often engraved with symbols of protection or luck. Romans believed that wearing these charms could prevent illness or help you recover if you did fall sick. If all else failed, there was always the belief in curses. Some Romans even believed that their sickness was a result of a curse placed upon them by someone with bad intentions. In these cases, it wasn't just the medicine you needed. It was a visit to a magician or a soothsayer who could read the stars and identify who had placed the curse. But what happened when Roman medicine couldn't save you? In a city where death was common, the answer was simple: you died. Life expectancy in ancient Rome was low. If you made it to 30, you were considered fortunate. And while some diseases could be cured, plagues and fevers that swept through the city, there was no real way to guarantee survival. If your time had come, there were no hospitals to send you to, no pain relief, and certainly no antibiotics. You'd be left to the mercy of the gods, the magic of herbs, and the prayers of family and friends. And in the end, you'd be sent to a tomb, or more commonly, cremated and your ashes placed in a small urn. Roman medicine was a strange mixture of trial and error, superstition, and a deep belief in fate. It worked some of the time, and most of the time it didn't. But the Romans, like everyone, pressed on. Because in the end, life in Rome was about surviving one day at a time. The sun is high now, you've worked. You've survived the city's grind. You've labored through Rome's suffocating heat and dust. And now you're feeling the weight of it all. Your muscles ache. Your skin is coated in grime. Your body is screaming for relief. Fortunately, there is an answer in Rome. The answer is always in the bathhouse. In ancient Rome, the bathhouse is much more than a place to cleanse your body. It is a social hub, a place of leisure, of conversation, and of relaxation. It is where you'll encounter people from all walks of life, rich and poor, young and old, free and enslaved. All come to the bathhouse, and all for different reasons. For some, it is an escape from the heat of the streets, where the sun beats down without mercy. For others, it's a ritual of cleansing, a daily practice to maintain both physical health and social status. The rich may visit their private baths, but the public bath is where Rome's heart beats. Relaxation. As you approach the bathhouse, you see it looming large. Massive stone walls rise up, adorned with statues and fountains. The building is built like a fortress with high arches and grand entrances. It looks more like a temple than a place for simple hygiene. But then, in Rome, everything is grand. Inside, the air is warm and moist, thick with the smell of incense and oils. You hear the gentle hum of conversation, the splash of water, and the soft echo of footsteps on marble floors. The light is soft, filtered through high windows, casting long shadows across the cool stone floors. The first area you encounter is the apoditerium, the changing room. Here, you disrobe, no modesty, no shame. The bathhouse is a place of freedom, of relief from the weight of society's rules. Slaves stand nearby, ready to take your clothes and store them in small cubbyholes. Now you stand naked like everyone else. There are no distinctions between the rich and the poor here. You are equal, at least in this moment, in the eyes of the gods of cleanliness. From here, you move on to the main bathing areas. There are 3 pools in every bathhouse. The first is the caldarium, the hot pool. The air in this room is thick and heavy with steam. The heat rises from the water in thick waves. As you lower yourself into the water, your body begins to relax. The heat seeps deep into your muscles, loosening tension you didn't even know you had. The sweat starts to pour off your skin, mingling with the steam in the air. It feels like everything, the aches, the stiffness, the stress is washing away. But there's more. As you settle in, you are surrounded by the sounds of conversation. Nearby, you overhear debates about politics, sports, or the latest gossip. Bathhouses are also places of socialization. Business deals are struck here, friendships are made, and philosophers often gather to discuss life's big questions. The caldarium is heat, but it is also relief. It is a place to strip away not just the grime of the streets, but the weight of your life. From the caldarium, you might move to the tepidarium, the tepid pool. The water is warmer than the cool air, but not as hot as the caldarium. It is a resting pool, a place to recover from the heat, where you float lazily, your limbs feeling light and free. Then there is the frigidarium, the cold pool, and here things get a little daring. The frigidarium is a shock to the system. The water is cold, shockingly, skin-numbingly cold. But once you dip in, you feel a rush. The cold tightens your skin, wakes your senses. It is like a rebirth. You take a deep breath and suddenly your body feels awake, alive in a way it hasn't all day. Some Romans swear by it, claiming that the cold strengthens their bodies, improves circulation, and sharpens the mind. Others, less brave, linger on the edge, dipping their feet in slowly before retreating back to the warm embrace of the tepidarium. But for those who stay, the cold is a challenge. It is the final step in the process of cleansing. It forces your body to fight back against the indulgence of heat. You are pushed, you are forced to face discomfort. But when you emerge, renewed, you feel as though you could conquer the empire itself. But the baths are not just about cleansing. The Roman bathhouse is where conversations happen. People gather in groups, lounging by the pools, exchanging news and stories. You see senators, merchants, soldiers, and slaves, people who might never interact in the streets, now shoulder to shoulder, united by the shared experience of bathing. Women, too, had their own separate bathhouses, but in many ways the rituals were the same. Women bathed, rested, socialized, and even attended to their beauty. Roman women might have slaves who would help them with their hair, applying oils and perfumes to maintain their beauty. It was not just a matter of hygiene, it was a status symbol, a reflection of Roman ideals of care, luxury, and relaxation. In addition to the physical baths, there were also other treatments. Some bathhouses offered massages performed by skilled attendants. These were not gentle rub-downs. They were deep, vigorous, often painful, designed to work out knots and tension in the body. Oils, like olive oil, were used to loosen the muscles, and some even used scraping tools, called strigils, to remove dirt and sweat from the skin. But there were also more magical practices. Some bathhouses had temples attached to them, where people would go for spiritual healing. Offerings were made to the gods, and some believed that a night spent in a bathhouse, in the embrace of its steam and water, could purify the soul as much as it cleansed the body. The Romans believed in more than just physical cleanliness. They believed that ritual baths could heal both the body and the mind, connecting them to the divine, and as the sun begins to set, the bathhouse empties. You rise feeling light, cleansed, and completely different from the person who first entered. The aches in your body have faded, your skin smooth and soft, your spirit renewed. You slip into your clothes, which feel fresh and light compared to the weight of your workday tunic. You step back into the streets, ready for whatever Rome will throw at you next. But for now, at least for this one moment, you are free. You are clean, you are whole. The air in Rome smells of many things, some sweet, some sour, some too strange to name. But when you're hungry, it all blends together. The city's pulse slows, and all you can think about is food. You've spent your day walking the streets, working, sweating, and surviving. Now it's time to eat. But in ancient Rome, food is never just about eating. It's about ritual, status, and flavor. It's about telling the world who you are and what you can afford. For the poor, meals are simple. Bread is your constant companion. It's the foundation of every meal, the first thing your stomach craves when hunger strikes. But it's not the soft, fluffy loaves you may imagine. Roman bread is dense, heavy, and often stale. The crust is thick, the crumb dry, and sometimes it's hard to chew without cracking your teeth. Yet, for many Romans, this is breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You dip it in wine to soften it, or perhaps in garum, a pungent fish sauce that Romans used on almost everything. Garum is the Roman version of ketchup, and it smells as bad as it sounds. It's made by fermenting fish guts in salt, left to rot in the sun until it's transformed into a thick, salty paste. Pour it over your bread, and suddenly your meal has flavor, if not taste. For the poorer classes, meals are about survival, not indulgence. You may eat a small bowl of porridge made from bar, ley or wheat served with a sprinkling of salt. A handful of olives, sour and briny, may accompany your meal. If you're fortunate enough to have a little extra, you might get some cheese, sharp, salty, and often made from goat's milk. The rich may have their feasts, but for the poor, food is about filling the belly, not satisfying the soul. If you're wealthy, food is far more than sustenance. It's a spectacle, a performance, a luxury. The elite of Rome feast like emperors, and their meals are as grand as their estates. You dine not just to eat, but to show your wealth, to display your ability to consume what others cannot. Your meal may begin with bread, but it is rich, soft, and fresh. Honey is spread thick over it, and fresh fruit, perhaps figs or grapes, are placed beside it. You sip wine, good wine, not watered down, not sour, but rich and smooth. But the real feast begins with meat. Imagine roast lamb, tender and juicy, dripping with fat. Perhaps a wild boar served whole, its skin crispy and crackling, its meat tender and flavorful. The rich eat like kings, and they show no restraint. Meat is a sign of power, a symbol of your ability to afford such indulgence. At a Roman feast, the menu is a parade of exotic dishes. You might be served stuffed dormice, small rodents filled with minced meat and spices, roasted to perfection. Or perhaps peacock, its feathers still bright and colorful as it's brought to the table, its meat tender and rich. These are not dishes for everyday consumption. They are dishes for feasting, for glory, for showing that you can afford the finest of everything. Wine flows freely at Roman feasts, and it is consumed in great quantities. But wine in Rome is always diluted, not like the rich, pure red wines we drink today. Roman wine is often mixed with water, sometimes even flavored with spices. And herbs, the rich drink mulsum, a sweetened wine mixed with honey. Others might sip on pumice wine, made from the leftovers of the grape harvest, strong, gritty, and not for the faint of heart. But no matter the type, Roman wine is a constant companion, flowing freely throughout the meal, washing down bite after bite of rich meats and exotic fruits. Roman food is not without its oddities, though. Even for the rich, meals can be strange and unpredictable. One dish that might surprise you is patina, a type of casserole that could be made from almost anything. It could be made with fish, eggs, or meat. It was a rich, savory pie, often spiced heavily with garum, of course, and sweetened with honey. Some Romans even made patina with intestines, treating them like any other edible part of the animal. Oddity? The Romans loved to eat exotic birds. You might be served flamingo, parrot, or even nightingale, roasted whole, their bright feathers. A stunning visual for your table. But to some Romans, eating these birds was not just about flavor. It was about status. Exotic foods, rare animals, and intricate recipes were all ways of showing that you could afford what others could not. And then there is dessert. Unlike our modern sweets, Roman desserts are more complex and unexpected. Fruit was a common end to a meal: apples, pears, pomegranates, figs, but not the way we eat them today. Romans often boiled their fruit or preserved it in honey, making it sweet and rich. Figs might be served stuffed with nuts, or grapes might be boiled and turned into a sticky syrup that coats your tongue. But the real treat comes in the form of honey cakes or pastries filled with nuts and dates, dripping with rich syrups. There's a strange fascination with spices in Roman desserts, too. Sweets are flavored with pepper, cinnamon, cloves, and even marmalade, a blend of fruit and honey meant to end the meal on a sweet but slightly savory note. By the end of a Roman feast, you are not just full, you are overfull. The rich ate until they could eat no more. They drank, they sang, they laughed, and they consumed in the most extravagant way possible. The idea of moderation was foreign. A meal was a chance to show off, to impress, to indulge. And then, if you were lucky, you'd visit the vomitorium. Contrary to popular myth, the vomitorium was not a place for guests to purge after overeating. It was a hallway or passageway through which guests exited the banquet hall. However, it has become synonymous with gluttony, and many Romans did indeed purge after a heavy feast. They would induce vomiting, either by feather or finger, to make room for more food. This was a practice among the wealthiest Romans, who could afford to eat to excess and indulge in this strange ritual. Roman food was not just about eating, it was about power, status, and pleasure. Meals were an expression of wealth, a reflection of Roman society's obsession with indulgence and grandeur. The rich ate what they wanted, when they wanted, and their feasts were as much about display as they were about sustenance. But even for the poor, food was important. It was a lifeline, it was survival. And as you finish your meal, the weight of the day's labor still clings to your shoulders. The city hums around you, its heart beating in time with your own. Rome's belly is always hungry, and so are its people. You've worked, you've eaten. Your body is tired, your stomach is full, but now comes the most important part of the day, the unseen world. In Rome, life and death were as much about the gods as they were about your own actions. Every aspect of your existence, from the moment you woke to the moment you closed your eyes at night, was influenced by divine forces, spirits, and omens. Rome was a city of gods. Everywhere you turned, you saw them. Statues, shrines, temples, sometimes all three in the same square. They were always watching, and you could not escape them. In the home, the most important gods were the Lares and the Penates. These were the household gods, small statues that guarded the family's health, prosperity, and well-being. Each Roman family had its own shrine, often in the kitchen, where they would offer small sacrifices of food, wine, and incense to keep the gods happy. It was said that the Lares and Penates would protect you from evil and bless your home with fortune. But the gods were not only in the home. They were in the streets, in the marketplace, in the public baths. The Romans believed the gods of the streets, or vials, were always with them. The gods of the fields, Ceres and Flora, made sure crops grew, while Jupiter, the king of the gods, ruled over everything, from weather to justice. No matter where you were always in the presence of divine forces. And then there were the temples, massive stone structures dedicated to specific deities. You might visit the Grand Pantheon to honor Jupiter, or the Temple of Venus to pray for love and fertility. These temples were not just religious sites, they were symbols of power, of authority. The gods had to be kept happy for the empire to remain strong. At any given moment, a Roman might be seen performing a ritual. It could be something as simple as offering a prayer before meals, or as complex as a grand sacrifice during a public festival. For the Romans, ritual was an essential part of life. Rituals were how they communicated with the divine. It was believed that without proper ritual, the gods would be angered. So, Romans made sure to follow each custom to the letter. Every rite had to be done exactly as it had been in the past. Every sacrifice performed with perfect precision. For example, at the Sacra Via, the sacred road that led to the temples, sacrifices of goats, pigs, and even oxen were made to ensure that the gods would bless the empire. The meat was offered to the gods, and the priests would read omens in the entrails, interpreting how the gods felt about Rome's future. The Romans believed that the gods showed their approval or disapproval in these signs, and they would change their actions accordingly. If the gods were pleased, victory was assured. If the gods were angry, well, then it was time for more sacrifices. But the Romans didn't just rely on their gods. They also believed in omens and superstitions that could shape their fate. Everywhere you looked, there was a belief in the supernatural. A strange noise, an omen of impending doom. A bird flying in the wrong direction, a sign of trouble ahead. The Romans had augurs, priests who specialized in interpreting the will of the gods through signs in nature, especially the flight patterns of birds. Divination also played a huge role in Roman life. If you needed guidance, you might turn to a soothsayer who would read the stars, or perhaps use tassemency, a form of divination based on the movement of knives or cuttings. There was always a way to understand the will of the gods, if you knew where to look. Beyond the gods, there were the mysterious forces, the magic that existed in the shadows of Roman life. In Rome, magic was not something to be feared. It was something to be used, if you knew how. The Romans believed that the universe was filled with invisible forces, and if you understood how to tap into them, you could influence the world around you. One of the most popular ways to harness these forces was through amulets. Romans carried charms, often made of gold, silver, or bone, and engraved with symbols of protection. These amulets could protect you from evil spirits, help you find love, or keep you safe in battle. They were worn by everyone, from slaves to emperors, and they were believed to carry divine protection. You might also find spells written on lead tablets, called depictions. These were curses, meant to bind or harm someone who had wronged you. The Romans believed that a curse, when written down on a tablet and buried or thrown into the Tiber, would reach the gods, who would then punish the person who had done you harm. It wasn't just about vengeance. It was about restoring balance, ensuring that the wrongdoer would pay the price. And then there are the curses, the darker side of Roman spirituality. For the Romans, vengeance was not just a personal affair. If you had been wronged, whether by an individual, a god, or a force of nature, you were entitled to seek justice. And in the Roman world, justice was not always served in the courts. Sometimes it was served with magic. One popular form of curse was the binding spell. If you wanted to bind someone, make them fall in love with you, stop them from talking, or make them sick, you could use a simple ritual. The most famous was the curse tablet, a small piece of lead inscribed with a spell and then buried under the ground. Sometimes these curses were written in Etruscan, the ancient language of the priests, to make them more powerful. And if you wanted to punish an enemy, you might ask for the help of Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, or Bacchus, the god of madness and intoxication. His influence was said to drive men to madness or to sickness, while Hecate's power could bind someone to your will or curse them into silence. But in the end, the gods were not just there to bless you. They were also there to remind you of your mortality. Rome was a hard city, and death was always looming just around the corner. Romans didn't fear death as we do today. They accepted it. After all, if the gods were watching over you, death was simply another part of the grand design. You could live your life, working hard, indulging in pleasure, but in the end, the gods would decide when it was time for you to go. Roman tombs were filled with epitaphs and inscriptions, but one thing was always true. They were reminders of the fate of all Romans. Whether in life or in death, the gods were always watching, always judging. And in the shadows of Rome's streets, in the quiet moments of the night, you could hear the whisper of the gods, reminding you that nothing lasts forever. You've survived the work of the day. You've cleansed your body in the baths. Your stomach is full and your body feels light. But in Rome, the day never truly ends. The night holds something else entirely, spectacle. As the sun sets over the city, the streets pulse with energy. People flood out of their homes, crowding the squares, heading toward the great arena, the Colosseum. The Colosseum, a structure of stone and marble, looms large in the heart of Rome. It stands as a symbol of Roman might, a colossal arena built for entertainment, for blood, for glory. It is a place of death, yes, but also of celebration. Here, you can watch the finest warriors battle to the death, hear the roar of the crowd, and feel the heat of the blood spilled in the name of Roman pride. At the Colosseum, you can witness the gladiators, the fighters who risk their lives for the entertainment of the masses. These men are not just warriors, they are stars, the celebrities of Rome. Might, a colossal arena built for entertainment, for blood, for glory. It is a place of death, yes, but also of celebration. Here, you can watch the finest warriors battle to the death, hear the roar of the crowd, and feel the heat of the blood spilled in the name of Roman pride. At the Colosseum, you can witness the gladiators, the fighters who risk their lives for the entertainment of the masses. These men are not just warriors, they are stars, the celebrities of Rome. Some are slaves, captured in distant lands, forced to fight for their lives. Others are criminals, sentenced to fight in the arena as punishment for their crimes. But some gladiators are volunteers, free men who choose to fight for the glory, for the money, or for the fame. Gladiators are trained in the ludus, the gladiator school, where they learn the arts of combat, how to wield a sword, how to fight with a net and trident, or how to use a gladius, the short sword favored by Roman. Soldiers, their bodies are honed for battle, their movements precise and deadly. When they step into the arena, the crowd's roar fills the air. The clash of metal on metal, the cries of agony, and the brutal dance of life and death. The gladiators fight not just for their survival, but for the favor of the crowd. Because in Rome, it is the crowd that decides who lives and who dies. If the fight is fierce enough, the crowd may call for mercy, raising their hands in a gesture of surrender. The editor, the man who organizes the games, will then decide the fate of the defeated. If the crowd is not satisfied, however, the defeated gladiator is left to die, abandoned in the dirt. The gladiatorial contests are just the beginning of the public entertainment that fills the Roman day. The Colosseum is a stage for spectacular games, where animals are slaughtered in front of a cheering crowd. Exotic beasts like lions, tigers, and even elephants are brought from the far corners of the empire to fight against each other or against condemned criminals. Sometimes the spectacle is not just a fight between beasts, but a mock battle, a reenactment of famous historical battles. The arena fills with men dressed as soldiers, staged in full battle gear, fighting to the death in the name of entertainment. These mock wars are meant to show Rome's power, to remind the people of the empire's ability to crush its enemies. But it's not just animals or gladiators who fight in the Colosseum. Sometimes, criminals are brought before the crowd to meet a grisly fate. If you've committed a crime, theft, murder, treason, you may be sentenced to damnatio ad bestias or condemnation to the beasts. You're thrown into the arena, surrounded by wild animals, and left to face a death more terrifying than any sword. The crowd at the Colosseum plays a key role in these spectacles. Their cheers, their jeers, their desires, all drive the events of the day. The crowd controls the fate of the gladiator as much as the editor. If the fight is exciting, if it draws blood, if it shows skill and bravery, the crowd calls for the gladiator's freedom. But if the gladiator shows weakness, if he falls to his knees, begging for mercy, the crowd may turn against him. The editor listens, watching the crowds. Response, they decide who lives and who dies. It's not just the gladiators who seek the favor of the crowd. The emperors and politicians use the games to win the people's support. The munera, the gladiatorial games, are a way to show the power of the emperor, to prove that he controls life and death. It is a public demonstration of Roman might, but the games are not without their cost. The Colosseum is a dark place, a symbol of the brutality of Roman life. The gladiators, the slaves, the animals, they are all commodities. Some gladiators fight until their bodies are broken, their spirits shattered. Even if they survive the arena, they often live short, painful lives filled with injury, disease, and exploitation. The games themselves, once a rare, luxurious event, become an obsession. They feed the people's desire for violence and spectacle, making the public crave more blood, more death. In the end, the games, like Rome itself, are built on the suffering of others. After the games, after the roar of the crowd fades into silence, another sound begins to fill the air, the sound of law. In Rome, the law is as old as the empire itself. It is a force that governs every aspect of life. The rich, the poor, the slave, and the free, all are subject to the same system of justice, though the punishment may differ. The Roman legal system is a complex web of laws designed to govern not only the city of Rome, but the entire empire. Laws are based on both tradition and precedent, and they are enforced by judges, magistrates, and the emperor himself. Roman law is divided into several categories. The civil law governs personal relationships, marriages, inheritances, contracts, and property. The criminal law deals with crimes and punishments, from theft to murder to treason. Roman courts are held in large open spaces where judges listen to arguments from both sides. Lawyers, trained in the art of persuasion, argue cases in front of a judge, who is often a powerful senator or magistrate. The outcome of the case depends on witness testimony, evidence, and precedent, though sometimes it depends on who can speak most convincingly. But what happens when the law is broken? Roman punishments are harsh, designed to deter crime and maintain order. The most severe punishment of all is death. Those who commit the most heinous crimes, like treason or murder, are often executed publicly. Some criminals are crucified, a slow and agonizing death where the body is nailed to a cross and left to die from exposure, starvation, or suffocation. It is a punishment designed to be as humiliating as it is painful. For lesser crimes, the punishment is still brutal but less extreme. A thief might have their hand cut off. A cheating spouse might be exiled from Rome. If you commit a violent act, you might be forced to fight as a gladiator in the arena, a form of humiliation meant to show your regret for your crime. Slaves have little protection under the law. A master can punish a slave for any reason and even execute them if they see fit. Slaves have no rights to property, no right to their own bodies, and no right to freedom. If a slave runs away, they are hunted down and brought back. Often, the punishment for running away is branding, whipping, or death. But perhaps the most terrifying part of Roman law is the emperor's power. The emperor is the ultimate authority, the arbiter of life and death. If an emperor is displeased, his will is absolute. He can have anyone executed, anyone arrested, anyone punished without trial. The emperor's word is law. Roman justice, with all its grandeur, is built on oppression. The games, the punishments, the gladiators, they are all part of a system designed to keep the people in check, to remind them of their place in the empire. The emperor, the senators, and the elite live above the law, while the common people, particularly slaves, suffer the consequences of breaking it. Yet, even in this harsh system, justice is not always guaranteed. In a city ruled by emperors, a court of law, and the relentless force of punishment, it's not always clear who gets to decide what's fair. If you're vibing with the story so far, hit that like button and subscribe. Let's start further. As the sun dips behind the hills, the lights of Rome begin to fade. The streets are no longer filled with the hustle of merchants, the clatter of carts, the endless sound of life. Now, a strange stillness falls over the city, a quiet that is both comforting and unsettling. Night has come to Rome. The city, in many ways, is a different world at night. The air cools, and the sounds of the bustling streets fade into the distance. The crowds that once flooded the forums now retreat into the shadows, and the grand buildings, statues, and temples take on a ghostly appearance. What was once bright and welcoming now seems oppressive, looming in the dark. You walk through the empty streets, the stone paving cool beneath your feet, the faint echoes of your steps the only sound. The grand columns of the temples, the statues of gods and emperors, all of them cast long shadows in the dim light of the flickering oil lamps. It's a city that feels both ancient and alive, yet strangely empty. But Rome is never truly silent. Not for long. As the night deepens, the vigils, the city's night watchmen, make their rounds. These men are tasked with keeping the streets safe, protecting against fire, and ensuring the peace is maintained. Armed with torches and whips, they patrol the narrow streets, their steps deliberate, their presence necessary. They are the guardians of the dark. The vigils are always watchful, always moving through the shadows. Their job is dangerous, watching for the threat of fire, which is always a danger in a city made of wood and stone, or hunting down those who break the law in the quiet hours. Whether it's a thief, a drunkard, or a runaway slave, the vigils are the last line of defense against disorder after. Darks, the night brings a different kind of mysticism to the city. The temples, which during the day are bustling with priests, worshippers, and offerings, now fall silent. Their torches flicker in the breeze, casting strange shadows over the stone, and the statues of the gods take on a more sinister air in the half-darkness. You feel an odd chill as you pass the Temple of Jupiter, its towering columns now shrouded in shadows. At night, the gods feel closer, watching. It's said that omens. Darks, the night brings a different kind of mysticism to the city. The temples, which during the day are bustling with priests, worshippers, and offerings, now fall silent. Their torches flicker in the breeze, casting strange shadows over the stone, and the statues of the gods take on a more sinister air in the half-darkness. You feel an odd chill as you pass the Temple of Jupiter, its towering columns now shrouded in shadows. At night, the gods feel closer, watching. It's said that omens go about their rituals after the sun sets. The air around you feels charged, almost electric. It's not just the gods that roam the streets after dark. There are other dangers. The night, after all, is for criminals and outcasts. The thieves who once slinked into the shadows of the busy streets now feel free to creep through alleyways, their faces hidden by the night. The sounds of footsteps behind you quicken your pulse. You wonder if someone is following. You can't see them. You pass by one of the taverns, the lamps dim inside, where the poorest Romans gather to drink cheap wine. The laughter is low, and the conversations are harsh. No one wants to stand too close to the edge of the street, for fear of being accosted. Nighttime in Rome is filled with hidden dangers, pickpockets, thieves, and worse. The narrow alleyways of Rome are a place where nightmares take shape. The houses are crammed together, the walls peeling, the doors often locked. These hidden paths lead to places most Romans avoid, places where the poor live, but also where crime flourishes. the poorer districts of Rome take on a more dangerous, shadowy feel after dark. You walk down one of these alleys, a faint odor of rotting food in the air. The buildings seem to lean closer together here, blocking out the stars above. A distant scream echoes from somewhere deep in the alley, quickly silenced. You quicken your pace. It's not a place for the faint of heart. In these dark streets, the slaves of Rome sometimes find their freedom, slipping away into the shadows to escape their masters. It's dangerous, but for some, it's worth the risk of being caught and punished. As you pass the dim-lit corners and empty streets, the spirits of the past seem to gather in the night. In Rome, death is never far behind. The city's tombs are scattered throughout the landscape, and the souls of the departed are said to wander through the streets after dark. You pass the tomb of the unknown soldier, a towering monument to those who died in battle, and you feel the faintest chill run down your spine. The tombs, the graves, the places where Romans are laid to rest, they are not just symbols of the past. They are haunted, living reminders that death is always lurking. Some Romans wear amulets or carry charms to protect themselves from spirits that might roam the streets. The god of death, Mors, is said to take his toll on those who do not show. Proper respect to the dead. You hear the soft, distant chime of bells from the temples to the dead, a reminder that they are never truly gone. They are still here, watching, waiting. As midnight approaches, the city grows quieter still. The vigils have completed their rounds, and the streets are nearly empty. Only the occasional shout from a tavern or a late-night traveler on the road can be heard. Rome feels different at night, its majestic grandeur diminished, replaced by something darker. It's as if the mysteries of the past rise up to greet you in the stillness. The moon casts long shadows over the city, and for a moment, you feel the weight of Rome's history pressing down on you. The eternal city has seen so many lives come and go, so many battles fought, so many glories and tragedies. The night holds them all. You stand on the edge of a cliff, looking out over the darkened landscape. You know that when the sun rises again, the city will wake once more, full of noise, full of life. But for now, the darkness is Rome's secret. The night reveals the city's hidden side, the things that roam in the shadows. In the silence, Rome feels both alive and dead, both ancient and eternal. In Rome, death is never far away. You can see it in the tombs that line the Via Appia, the ancient road leading out of the city. You hear it in the quiet whispers of the night, where the spirits of the departed are said to walk among the living. You feel it in the rituals, in the memories, and in the homes that still bear the marks of those who have passed. Death is a part of Roman life, as much a reality as work, food, or even love. But in Rome, death does not mean the end. You cannot walk through Rome without encountering the dead. They are everywhere, in the tombs that line the streets, in the ashes of the cremation pyres, in the memorials to those who came before. Rome's dead are not left to the earth. They are honored, their bodies carefully, tended to in grand monuments and private graves. The wealthier families build elaborate mausoleums, stone structures that rise above the roadways. Some have inscriptions carved into the stone, listing the names of the deceased, along with their titles, their achievements, and sometimes even their virtues. These monuments are meant to preserve the legacy of the dead, to ensure their memory lives on. As you walk the streets of Rome, you may pass one of the columbaria, large underground tombs where the ashes of the dead are stored in niches carved into the walls. Each niche holds the ashes of one person, carefully sealed in an urn, often marked with a plaque. The families would come to visit their dead, offering prayers and gifts, a glass of wine, a bouquet of flowers, or perhaps a small piece of bread. These offerings were meant to nourish the soul of the deceased in the afterlife. When someone dies in Rome, it is a spectacle, but not just for the living. The funeral is a carefully orchestrated ritual, a process that involves not only the physical body but the soul itself. The body is carefully prepared by family members and friends. The eyes are closed, the mouth is sealed. The body is washed, anointed with oils, and wrapped in a shroud. If the family can afford it, perfumed oils and fragrant flowers are used to mask the smell of decay. The deceased is often laid out in the home, surrounded by family and friends so that they can mourn. together before the body is taken to its final resting place. The funeral procession is an important part of the ceremony. It starts with the body, carried by family members or hired mourners, and is followed by a long line of people, all of them singing funeral dirges. The mourners cry out, tearing their clothes and beating their chests. In some cases, slaves were even forced to follow behind the body, lamenting the loss. This public display of grief is meant to show respect to the deceased and to demonstrate that the family is properly honoring their life. Once the procession reaches the burial site, the body is either cremated or buried in a tomb. The family members may leave coins for the deceased's journey to the afterlife, a practice inherited from the belief in Karen, the ferryman of the dead, who would carry souls across the river Styx. For the Romans, the decision between cremation or burial depended largely on wealth and status. Cremation was the most common practice, especially for the wealthy. The body was placed on a funeral pyre, set alight, and reduced to ashes. The ashes were then collected and placed in an urn, which would be stored in a family tomb or columbarium. The ashes of the dead were often kept in elaborate urns, carved from stone or marble, to reflect the importance of the deceased. In the end, death in Rome was not something to fear. It was something to prepare for, something to accept, and something to honor. The Romans did not shy away from death. They lived in full knowledge of its presence. They understood that life was fleeting, and that the gods and fate controlled when it was time to go. But they also believed that legacy mattered. By honoring the dead, by creating tombs, and by performing rituals in their name, the Romans ensured that the dead would never be forgotten. The afterlife may have been uncertain, but one thing was clear. The memory of the deceased would live on as long as the family continued to honor them. As the night falls over Rome, the spirits of the past linger in the tombs, in the mausoleums, in the quiet places of the city, and in the hearts of the living. The memory of those who came before remains ever present, ever strong. As the final light fades from the city and the streets quiet once more, a sense of awe settles over Rome. The city of the emperors, the gladiators, the philosophers, and the soldiers, a city that once ruled the known world, now stands at the edge of history. But even as the eternal city fades into the past, Rome's legacy lives on, stretching across time, reaching into the far corners of the modern world. The grand empire may have fallen, but its mark is everywhere. You can see it in the cities that still carry Roman names, in the laws we follow, in the architecture that continues to awe us. Rome may be gone, but Rome never truly left. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of Rome is its legal system, a foundation for law and governance that continues to influence societies today. The Roman legal system was one of the most advanced in the ancient world, and its principles laid the groundwork for much of modern law. Roman law was based on written codes, the most famous of which is the 12 Tables, a set of laws that governed everything from family matters to property rights. Over time, Roman law evolved, becoming more. Perhaps the most enduring legacy of Rome is its legal system, a foundation for law and governance that continues to influence societies today. The Roman legal system was one of the most advanced in the ancient world, and its principles laid the groundwork for much of modern law. Roman law was based on written codes, the most famous of which is the 12 Tables, a set of laws that governed everything from family matters to property rights. Over time, Roman law evolved, becoming more sophisticated, with detailed procedures for everything from contracts to criminal justice. The Romans also introduced the concept of innocent until proven guilty, which remains a cornerstone of many modern legal systems. The idea that a person is presumed innocent and must be proven guilty was revolutionary, and it has influenced the judicial systems of countries across the globe. Rome's concept of citizenship was equally revolutionary. In the Roman world, citizenship carried with it rights such as the ability to vote, the right to a trial, and legal protection. These ideas continue to shape the way we view citizenship and human rights in the modern world. Another area where Rome's influence is profound is in architecture and engineering. The Romans were master builders, and their innovations in construction still serve as the foundation for much of the world's infrastructure today. The Roman arch, which you can still see in the ruins of the Colosseum and aqueducts, was a revolutionary engineering feat that allowed Romans to build structures of unprecedented size and stability. The arch enabled them to construct vast bridges, aqueducts, and public buildings, many of which still stand today, surviving the passage of time. Roman roads were another engineering marvel. The famous Via Appia, the ancient road that stretched across the empire, is still in use today in parts of Italy. The Romans built over 250,000 miles of roads across their empire, connecting distant provinces and facilitating the movement of their legions. These roads, paved with large stone slabs, were crucial for the empire's military and economic success, and they form the basis for modern transportation networks. When you walk through the streets of Rome, you walk in the footsteps of a language that shaped much of the Western world. Latin, the language of the Romans, is the foundation of many modern languages, known as the Romance languages, including Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Romanian. But Latin's influence extends far beyond just these languages. It is the language of law, medicine, science, and the Catholic Church. Many of the words we use every day, words like auditory, supervision, media, and etc., are rooted in Latin. Latin is the language that carries the ideas of Roman philosophers like Cicero and Seneca, whose thoughts on ethics and governance continue to be studied today. The works of Virgil and Ovid still inspire poets, writers, and scholars. In fact, the Roman authors continue to be a touchstone for anyone interested in the development of Western literature and thought. Art, too, bears the mark of Rome's legacy. The Romans didn't just create functional buildings, they created art. They painted murals, sculpted statues, and designed mosaics that conveyed a sense of grandeur, history, and culture. The Romans mastered portraiture, and their sculptures were often incredibly lifelike, capturing the very essence of the people they depicted. Roman mosaics adorned the floors of wealthy homes and public buildings, telling stories of mythology, history, and everyday life. These mosaics remain as a testament to Roman craftsmanship, and they continue to influence modern interior design and decorative art. Even Roman theater lives on today. Plays and performances held in the Roman theaters were a reflection of the empire's love for entertainment, drama, and spectacle. The gladiatorial games and circus races might have been brutal, but they were a form of art, a celebration of Roman power and human endurance. The modern Olympic Games and the circus arts have roots in these ancient Roman performances. The Romans, too, left their mark on religion. While the Roman gods have faded into history, many of their deities and rituals have merged into the fabric of modern religion. The Romans believed in a pantheon of gods and goddesses: Jupiter, Juno, Neptune, Mars, and many more. These gods, along with the mythological stories that accompanied them, shaped much of Western religious thought. One of the most important legacies of Roman religion is Christianity. The early Christians were persecuted by Roman emperors, but as the empire declined, Christianity eventually became the dominant religion of the Roman Empire. Constantine made Christianity the official religion of the empire in the 4th century AD, and the church that emerged from Roman rule is still a global force today. The Catholic Church's roots trace directly back to the Roman Empire, and its institutions, practices, and even its architecture carry the influence of Roman traditions. As Rome fell into decline and the Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD, many believed that the light of civilization would fade with it. But in truth, the legacy of Rome only grew stronger. The Roman Empire may have fallen, but its ideas, culture, and achievements spread across the world. The Byzantine Empire, which continued in the East for nearly another 1,000 years, kept the flame of Roman law, art, and culture alive. Even today, the influence of Rome is evident in our governmental systems, our architecture, our languages, and our beliefs. Rome's contributions to science, medicine, and engineering have shaped the modern world in ways we often don't realize. And though the empire may have fallen, the eternal city lives on in the legacy it left behind. As the sun sets on the modern world, we find ourselves still walking the streets of ancient Rome. We still use the roads that the Romans paved. We still live by laws that were inspired by Roman principles. We still speak in Latin-derived languages and dream of gladiators, emperors, and temples. Rome may no longer rule the world, but it continues to rule our hearts, minds, and imaginations. The eternal city lives on, as vibrant and powerful as it ever was, if not in the empire, then in the memory of its greatness. Rome is not just a city. It is an idea, an inspiration, a legacy that will never die. As the moon casts its soft light over the ancient ruins, you stand at the heart of Rome, looking out over a city that has seen it all. The eternal city, once the crown of a mighty empire, now stands in silent majesty, a reminder of what was and what still endures. Rome is a city that has survived the rise and fall of empires, the destruction of wars, and the passage of centuries. And in this quiet moment, you can feel it. Rome's soul is still alive. Its history, its passions, its struggles, and its dreams echo in the streets. The blood of its gladiators still stains the arena. The prayers of its citizens still linger in the ruins of its temples. The glory of its emperors still resonates in the hearts of those who stand in awe of its grand monuments, but Rome is not just a city of the past. It is a city of living memory, a city that continues to shape the world today. As you wander through the ancient streets, it's impossible to ignore the sense of connection to those who walked these same paths centuries ago. You are walking in the footsteps of emperors, philosophers, gladiators, and everyday Romans who built this city from the ground up. Their stories are embedded in the very stones beneath your feet. Rome's legacy is not just written in books or monuments, but in the memories passed down from generation to generation. The stories of Julius Caesar, Augustus, and Nero are still told today. The wisdom of Cicero and Seneca continues to shape our thoughts on law, ethics, and governance. The architecture of the Pantheon, the Colosseum, and the Forum still awe visitors with their grandeur, standing as testaments to Rome's unmatched engineering and artistic skill. Even as the empire crumbled, its ideas lived on. The Roman road system, the legal framework, and the concept of citizenship still influence how we organize and govern our societies. The language of Latin continues to be the foundation for many modern languages, and the Roman gods have evolved into the traditions and beliefs that shape religious practices around the world. In every corner of the world, you can feel the pulse of Rome beating through the ages. It is not just memory, it is living history. But even beyond the physical remains, there is something else in the air here, something deeper, something that cannot be captured by stone or marble. It is the spirit of Rome. It is the ambition, the resilience, and the power that once drove a small city-state to dominate the known world. It is the undying desire to build, to create, to leave a mark on history. Rome, with all its flaws, its cruelty, its excesses, was a city of dreams. It was a city of boldness, where the impossible was made possible. The Romans didn't just build an empire, they built an idea. That spirit is still alive today. It lives in the art, in the architecture, in the ideas that continue to shape our lives. Every time we make a decision based on justice, every time we speak in a Romance language, every time we look to the stars in wonder, we are touched by the spirit of Rome. Even as the empire fell, the dream of Rome did not die. It was carried forward by empires, cultures, and civilizations that looked to Rome as a beacon. And it continues to inspire those who seek greatness, who dare to dream beyond the limits of their time. Rome may have fallen, but its endurance is what truly defines it. The empire may have crumbled under the weight of its own power, but its ideas have not. In fact, they've only grown stronger. Rome's collapse is often seen as the end of an era. But for those who look closely, the fall of the Roman Empire is not the end of Rome. It is simply a new chapter. The influence of Rome did not fade. It lived on in the Byzantine Empire, in the Catholic Church, in the Renaissance, and in the modern world. Just as the ruins of Rome are still standing today, so too are the ideas that once built the empire. The ideals of law, citizenship, and civilization that Rome created continue to be the foundation of the world we live in today. The infrastructure of Roman roads still shapes our transportation networks. The art, culture, and philosophy of Rome continue to inspire artists, writers, and thinkers. Rome's end is not a tragedy, it is a triumph. It is proof that greatness is never truly gone. It is passed down through the ages, carried by those who continue to believe in its ideals. As you stand here, gazing over the ruins of the ancient city, you realize that you are a part of something much bigger. You are standing on the shoulders of those who came before you, walking in the steps of emperors, philosophers, and dreamers. Rome is not just a city, it is an idea, a vision that transcends time. The eternal city lives on, not just in its monuments and ruins, but in the hearts of those who still believe in its power. Rome's legacy is carried by you, by me, by everyone who has ever looked at the city and felt its pull. As the night falls and the stars shine over the city, you realize that Rome is never truly gone. Its light continues to shine, as bright as ever, in the hearts of those who choose to honor its spirit. And so, as the city sleeps, you close your eyes, knowing that Rome's story will never end. It will live on in the memory of those who cherish its greatness, in the dreams of those who seek its wisdom, and in the hearts of those who will one day walk these streets. Rome will always be with us, always guiding us, always reminding us that greatness is never truly lost. The eternal city is not bound by time. It is eternal, immortal, and forever. Rome lives on, and it always will.